Ngowi TV, informed economists and business perspective.
Let me start now. The key issue is really, I call it making sense of the 2018-19 budget for CSOs, civil society organizations. So what I'll be doing is not really telling you budget state this and that, but then is saying, you know, what we are seeing in the budget, what does it mean to you as civil society organizations, as CSOs. And the point of departure here is, of course, you know, the broad introduction and context. Understanding that if you are to understand the national budget, really you have to understand it in a broader context. You have to understand Tanzanian context in the context of East African community. The Tanzanian budget that we are having reflects a lot, has a lot of linkages to what is taking place in the region, East African community. So there is a common theme, which is industrial economy for employment and sustainable social welfare. So almost everything that you see in the budget when it comes to revenues, to expenditure, to taxes, to fiscal policy, monetary policy, really reflect this big theme of industrialization. Now within Tanzania, and you know, I've added a lot of red lines, which are what I call implication for civil society organizations. And I've shared with Edna, and I think you'll share with colleagues here. So you could see, in order to understand Tanzanian context, understand that this year's budget is the third budget for the first government. So it's not the first time that this government is having budget, but it's the third time. We had two already. And of course, it is informed by a number of issues, including Vision 2025, including 5 years development plan, which we are now on phase 2. But also it is informed by, you know, annual plan and, you know, of course, the ruling party manifesto. And the main goal here is poverty eradication, industrial economy, middle income, and of course, and the aim of becoming middle income by 2025. Now, by this, I think we should ask ourselves, I paused a little bit and say, yes, this budget is informed by all these things. We as civil society organizations, to what extent have we informed this budget? I understand that somehow we might have informed it, but somehow we might not have informed it. So I'll be pointing fingers to the government, I'll be pointing fingers to you or to us. I understand Irene does a lot on health. I understand Mahmoud they do a lot on health. I understand Hakira Mali, you do a lot for that. I understand Legal Human Rights Center. You understand Mama Vicky and you know, those kind of stuff. So I understand really. But then the key issue is, are we doing enough, or are we letting the budget just be informed by others and we stand as people who are going to just receive it? I think we should really inform the budget. We should be informing the budget process. So I would propose maybe we should also be having not only post-budget analysis, but really pre-budget, I don't know, meeting, so that we put our inputs into the budgeting process. I understand some of you are kind of raising awareness, lobbying, advocating for those kind of stuff. But then it's good really to have a budget that is informed not by only these processes, but also by CSOs. So my key issue will be, to what extent are we civil society organizations informing the budget? Exactly where you are. I understand what Sikika does on health. I understand what Akielimu does on education. I understand what I'm not seeing Akiadhi here. I understand what TGNP are doing. So what I'm saying really, just by looking at the key issue that are informing the budget, we should pause and ask ourselves as you know, as CSOs, as chief executive officers, to what extent are we also making sure that our voices are in the budget process? Instead of, I'm not saying we are doing so, but we should not just complain that the budget was good, was bad. Did we really contribute into that? Again, in order to understand 1 year's budget, really, you have to go back several years, and I normally go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years budget. I should have said maybe this. I've been advisor to the Parliamentary Committee on Budget since Mr. Chenge's time, since Mama Hawagesia's time. So normally I tell the members of Parliament, really, if you are to understand the 1 year's budget, go back several years. So here I'm just going back just 1 year. Before I zero into 2018-19 budget, I'm looking a little bit on 2017-18 because it will inform us what we should expect on 2018-19. For example, in terms of revenue trend, you could see by April 2018, only around 69% of annual targets of 31.7 trillion had been achieved in terms of revenue. You know, and remember, by April, it is the third quarter. Mathematically, within the third quarter, you should have achieved 75%. So if you have achieved 69, it means that there is almost 6% that had not been achieved. So this tells us really the last year's budget, if this is the trend, might not really reach, you know, of course, now we have to talk in the past tense, might not have reached the goal. In terms of domestic revenue, you could see it had reached around 74%. Of 74.3%, that's it's relatively okay. But now the key issue is when you are reading the budget, you will see reasons for underperformance. Now, that's where I say, in order to understand this year's budget, you have to read several years' budgets. I've been reading, I think, 10 years' budgets back. Every time, really, reasons for underperformance are exactly the same. I would call it, it's really copy-paste. It's really copy-paste. You would see issues of formalization of the informal sector, tax evasion, issues that some of us are doing a lot here, issues of informality of the informal sector, issues of unfriendly environment, you know, for tax payment, high tax rate, high cost of paying, you know, those kind of stuff. So really, for we as people in the civil society organizations who are supposed to be lobbying and advocating, who are supposed to be also doing some service delivery, I think we should ask the why question. You know, why are we having, you know, there's reasons for underperformance? Because really, if you look at the reasons that have been given for underperformance, they are symptoms for a bigger problem. Really, those are not reasons, really. There is a reason behind tax evasion. There is a reason behind high tax rate. There is a reason behind traders not using electronic fiscal device. So really, we should question and help, of course, to provide a solution to the root causes of the problems. So I think we should be doing those kind of stuff. But also, of course, asking what has been done on these challenges. Because again, I would say, if you read, and I've been doing this, 5, 6, 7 years back, you see same problems coming now, again, and again. So I think we should, again, help where we can to provide the solutions, but also really help to make sure that, these problems are being, are being fixed. When we look at the expenditure, I'm still, expenditure trend by April 2018. I'm still looking at last year's budget before I zero into this year's budget. You could see by April, around 68.4% of money had been released. What does this tell us? You have, it's less than 70%. So you have 30% that are not been released. But of course, by April, we also have to be technical. By April, if you assume equal disbursement, equal monthly or quarterly disbursement, the figure should have been 75, not 100 really, not 100, because we want 100 by 30th of June. But then by April, third quarter, 25 times 3, it should be 75, yeah? You could see we have around almost 7% really expenditure not met. And this, of course, is an issue because I understand some of us, TGNP understand, and others are also tracking government expenditure. Because when you do budgeting, you are promising. You are promising people this year I'm going to use 32.48 trillion. So people also, psychologically, they position themselves to consume that money. So when it's not coming, actually you are letting them down. You are letting them down. So, but of course you have to understand what are the issues. You could see here around 76%, 76.4% for current expenditure. And this is not a problem actually. Because by the third year, we are above 75%. It's okay. And, there is no problem. Normally, recurrent expenditure is money for wages, for salaries, for running offices. There is no problem in that post as such. Because you understand, people always get their salaries, etc. There is no problem. The problem is on the development expenditure. You could see, by this time, development expenditure for projects was around 23.6%. You could see almost 52% off the mark. So what does this mean? We are dealing with a development expenditure. And development really include investment on infrastructure, on roads, ports, airports, infrastructure, education, those kind of stuff. So it means really you are not likely to achieve your developmental goals, Vision 2025, 5 years development plan, etc., if by third quarter you have only spent 23%. By extension, assuming that at the end of the financial year, you are able to release the remaining money so that you get let's say 100% at the end of financial year. What does this mean? It means, you know, the money that is remaining, if it has been released in the last quarter, we are going to have a problem of what we call absorption capacity. But then in terms of governance, we may jump into bad governance. Why? Because if by last quarter, if you give the remaining almost 75% actually, in the last quarter, if you release it, what happens is people will try to, you know, the burning rate will be high. We'll try to use this money as quick as possible before the financial year ends. And this now tempts us to fall into bad governance, into bad expenditure. And this is what former Controller Auditor General would not like. Because you know, I'm in the civil society sector, I'm in private sector, sometimes also I deal with the government as a consultant. It's very good actually in the last quarter of the year as a consultant. You'll be paid in advance, kusudi pesa ziishe. Are you getting my point? But now the question is it good governance? Is it good governance? So those of us who are doing, those of you who are doing good governance, really this is what could mean. And that's why I call my presentation making sense of the budget. You know, when the money is only spent, and most of the money comes, the largest chunk, when it comes on the last quarter of the year, what does it mean? We are likely to fall into bad governance. Deus, I've seen you. Usipomtaja Deus unaweza kupata tatizo huko tunakokwenda. So, on a serious note, you know, this is tunajua kwa lot, eh? Now, again, you could see again, of course, there have been a number of achievements that were mentioned on public debt, etc. I will mention it later. But then the key issue is within public debt, I'll come to it later because, you know, it has been raising. You know, I think from 2017, 18 to you know, last year, for 1 year, it increased by around 13%. And of course, later, as you're going to see, the debate really when it comes to national debt is not only on the size. It's around 49.6%, I mean 49.6 trillion. That's not really the key issue as such. Of course, it's also an issue, but then the issue is the speed with which it is increasing. I think we'll come at that later because when you read the budget speech, we are told it is sustainable, maybe okay, but then there are quite a number of issues to discuss. Now, within these issues, for example, when it comes to national debt, we see the figure on the money that has been used to settle national debt. A key issue for us as civil society organization would include issues of cost of debt servicing. For example, you would see in the 2018-19 budget, almost 30% of the money is going to use to pay debts. 30%. You know, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. We are going to see it later. And what does this mean? It means you are foregoing, to use economics language, you are sacrificing expenditure on public goods and services. You are foregoing education, health, etc., etc. But of course, in the first place, how did we reach here? How comes that we are having so much, that the country has to borrow so much? Partly, of course, because people are not paying tax a lot, because there might be, you know, bad expenses, etc. I'll come back to this when I go to 2018-19 budget. But also within this broad expenditure trend, some of you are doing PETs, you know, public expenditure tracking. You know, I remember in my times at Foundation, I think we used it to give some funds for people to conduct PETs. So it's good to see this expenditure, but to what extent we as civil society organizations have we followed the money? To what extent have we done PETs in education, in health, in water? You know, I'm not seeing some guys who do, I did some PETs in water many years ago. I'm not seeing Jeff Makongo, I'm not seeing some other people. But then the key issue is really, we as civil society organizations, are we just happy that the government has spent this money? Have we done PETs, public expenditure tracking? Have we seen that the money goes really to where it should be going? You know, those kind of stuff. Have we seen the leakages? You know, when the money leaves the treasury to that village, to that hospital, you know, is it, how much percent is really coming to the end beneficiary? It is we, people in the civil society organizations, who are supposed to be doing the tracking. Now the question is, are we doing it exactly? Again, of course, you can see there is a poor development expenditure, because you could see only 23%. Now, to what extent we as people in civil society organizations, CSOs, to what extent are we doing our advocacy to make sure that really money goes for development? Because, I mean, some of you have introduced yourself, you are in the poverty reduction space, some in education, but then if money is not being spent really, we'll see the same problems. Haki elimu, we don't see the classes you want. People in the water sector will not see the water that you want. Hatutaona mama kitua ndo kichwani, you know, those kind of stuff. So really, it's not only the question should not only be celebrating that expenditure has been done, but then has it been done properly? Those are part of issues. When I'm looking now to 2018-19 budget, now this is the year's budget, there are what we call macroeconomic policy targets. You know, normally government has targets. You know, it has issues that it wants to achieve come the end of financial year. This is the plan for, you know, so that when we come to June, 30th June 2019, we wanted to have achieved all these things here. For example, we want the real GDP, gross domestic product, to grow by 7.2%. Now it is around 7.1%. I'll come to issues later. And you can see want inflation to be single digit, to remain, of course, single digit. We have attained it last, you know, June. This is July. So June inflation rate is around 3.4. Last time it was 3.6. The other time it was 3.8. You know, yes, it's going down. And those who follow me, this is my article in the coming this Saturday, you know, on whether really we can maintain this inflation the way we have done it. In my view, yes, we can. But then part of bigger question is what we are seeing, inflation for June is lower than inflation for May. Inflation for May is lower than inflation for April. So it has been going down. But people should understand really, because a lot of media do call me and tell me, yeah, inflation has gone down, but then we have not seen prices decreasing. You should understand really. When I think about inflation, it is the reduction in the rise of the general price level. So when there is inflation of 3.4% this month, and it was 3.6 last month, it does not mean that prices have gone down. What it means is prices are increasing, but then the rate of increase of prices has gone down. This has to be well understood. People expect that because June inflation was lower than May inflation, then I go to Kariako, I'll find lower prices. You'll never see it. You'll never see it. And maybe it's we economists do not communicate well. I've answered this question 1,000 times. Now it's 1,001 times I'm saying. Unapozungumza na watu wako, inflation really does not mean kwamba bei zimeshuka. Kinachoshuka ni kasi ya kupungua kwa bei.